Hello, it's Wednesday and it's our third lesson on our thriller narrative in writing. It's using the text The Water Tower by Gary Crew. So we're going to explore the use of characterization inside of the text The Water Tower. So how characters are built up in our minds and our perception of them. How is that done? How is that manipulated by the writer of the book? Characterization is all about how an author builds up a character through the language that they use. This language can be used to describe their actions, using verbs to show specific details in their movements. So, did they walk, did they amble, did they rush? All of those show a difference in a way of moving, and then that gives us a little bit more indication about that character. If they're walking, they're quite chilled out. If they're ambling, they're even more chilled out. And they might be distracted. If they rush, they're panicked and they might be late for something. So they all give us a little bit of a subtle difference. Now, adverbs describe the verb in even more detail. So they play a huge part because they explain how the verb was done. So if they rushed and then you've used the word quickly, obviously rushed means move fast anyway, then that would be different to rushing frantically, because frantically would show an element of panic. Characterization can also be done through the speech of the characters. So we looked at how Spike spoke, and that was quite contrasting to how Bubba spoke. So we were able to understand their characters more through looking at the words that they chose to say. And it can also be done subtly, so kind of secretly. Think of that inference, reading between the lines here. The information that you are given in terms of their home life, their family, and clues in their name. Now, we know that's all really important when it came to Spike and Bubba, because there were some big differences in their home life and their names, as we explored yesterday. So, we're going to think back to the text. If you want to go back to the YouTube page and look at the video from yesterday to reread it, you can. I'm also going to upload the text in a PowerPoint for you to read as well, so you can do it that way if you prefer, because then you don't have to listen to me again. So think of all the things that you learn about the town of Preston. So what we're going to do is we're going to first of all put it in our own words. What do I know about Preston? And then I'm going to back it up with the words and the phrases taken from the book that aided in you coming up to that perception of Preston. So you've got a resource, it's kind of your starter resource. It's going to be done very guided, and on the resource is the word Preston. So it looks a little bit different to this because this is obviously on a PowerPoint, but basically I'm thinking of Preston and then I'm going to immediately start to jot down around Preston any perceptions that I've already got. So the first thing that I think of is that it contains an old abandoned water tower that's potentially dangerous. The whole theme of the book is about this water tower, so that's where I'm going to start. Now, what I then need to do is I then need to think of, how did I come to this perception? How did I decide that it does contain an old abandoned water tower? And these words and phrases are what led me to that conclusion. So it says here, iron legs rusted. Now that helps me to recognise that it's old. Tank warped and leaking also helps me to understand that it's old, but then it might be potentially dangerous as well, because if it's leaking, then that's not great. The fact that there was a security fence that kept trespassers out tells me that it might be a bit dangerous in there, and it also tells me that it's maybe a little bit abandoned because that fence has been around it to stop people going there. So it's this a theme of nobody's allowed there. Now it says the words, my mother says it's dangerous, obviously that builds up to this potentially dangerous. And then casting a long dark shadow. This is another bit of evidence that suggests that it is dangerous. So there are many more things that I can think about when it comes to Preston, and that's what I'd like you to maybe pause the video now and then go back, read the book or listen to me reading the book, and then I want you to start to jot down some ideas about Preston. Now this is your starter, it's not your main task, this is just me showing you how to do this guided before then you go on to talk about Bubba and Spike. So don't spend too long on it, but do please make sure you have a little go. I'd say maybe 5 minutes max, and do it bit by bit. Read a bit. Oh, bingo, I found something. Write a bit. Okay, don't read the whole book. And then pause, and then when you've finished with your task, just press play on the video again and we'll move to what I had come up with. So pause the video now, read the text, complete this resource, and then I will see you in a minute. Okay, so you've had a go at looking at the characterisation of Preston. Let's see what else I came up with. If you want to edit and improve your resource, please feel free to do that now. So, in addition to what I had before, I've got that the illustrations show that it's full of residents who seem to idolise the water tower. Remember that illustration we saw yesterday of those 3 people who were all staring gleefully, menacingly at the water tower when Bubba was on the top? They seem to idolise it, don't they? It's full of mystery. Preston is full of mystery because no one remembers anything about the water tower. And then finally, there's not much for children to do in summer. It's something that I've come up with about Preston. So after I did this, I then found the evidence that linked to all of those points. So let's have a look. You've already seen the top one. So let's start with the illustrations again. So in most of the illustrations, the residents are staring at the water tower. That's really important. If you track back through, you'll see that. Now, obviously, you don't have the book in front of you, and I've tried to include as many illustrations as I can. But it's a big theme, this staring at the water tower. Over here, full of mystery, is directly taken from the text. See, I've got quotation marks around it because I've just copied it straight from there. Nobody in Preston could remember when the water tower was built or who had built it. And then finally, there's not much for children to do in the summer is because one summer afternoon they went up to the tower for a swim because there doesn't seem to be anything else for them to do. So that's the characterisation of Preston, and that was your guided practice initial resource. Now, what you're going to do for your independent resource is to think about what you've learned about these characters. You do exactly the same. So you've got a picture of Spike. Here he is. So you do him first, and then a picture of Bubba. So again, you'll need the text, and then you'll need to, first of all, draw all the things that you think about these characters, and then you need to back it up with evidence. So you can rewind the video to see what that looked like when it came to the Preston one. I have that up if you need to. But you should have done the guided practice resource anyway, so you should have a good indication of what you need to do. So have a go at this resource. If you're working on Teams, then there should be the opportunity for you to just type underneath it. So please feel free to do that. Obviously on paper, you're going to jot all around it. So pause the video now, get on with the resource, have a really good go at that, comparing it to the text, and then when you are ready, press play to see what I came up with. As always, please do really work independently on this, have a really good go at it, and then only when you are finished, then press play again. Please remember that you are only cheating yourself if you don't pause the video now. Okay, so don't press play now and carry on unless you have completed everything that you need to do. If you have completed everything you need to do, then stick with me. We're about to move on. So, your turn for Spike. So all those things that you thought about Spike, let's see what I've got. Many things. So having a look from the top to the bottom. First of all, the fact his name is Spike. It tells me that he's harsh, he's painful, he's sharp, he's mean. The fact that he's a bit of a bully comes from the word suckers, that when he grins down on the town. Now it says that I've said he doesn't actually wait for his friend. I put friend in kind of those loose, like friend, really? And that's because it said Spike was already at the top. He has no clue that, and really I could have put Bubba puffed on behind. Now, when I say that I think that Spike is quite confident, maybe a little clumsy, that comes from the word clambered. Because this kind of links to the fact he's not really a good friend, because instead of supporting Bubba when he lost his trousers, Spike laughs and he finds his panic funny, and that came from Spike laughed. And then Spike doesn't care because he's so far in front of his friend, or that he's going too fast for him, links to Bubba puffed on behind. These 3 elements are all linked to the fact that Spike is a lousy friend. And then we've learned about his family, that his mum is caring and loving, but he actually doesn't care about how his mum feels towards him. He's very selfish, and that's because he says, my mother says it's dangerous, but it's worth it, hey? Okay, so now on to Bubba. So hopefully you've had a go at Bubba already. Let's see the thoughts that I've had on Bubba and then where I got those from with reference to the text. So Bubba, his name is maybe he's a little bit round and soft in terms of his kind of emotions and personality. Maybe he's kinder and friendlier and more sensitive than Spike. Maybe he's even a little bit chubby. he's kind and gentle, because Bubba sounds very much like Bubble, doesn't it? And bubbles are delicate. Bubbles can be popped really easily. So we need to be careful when we're with Bubbles, and maybe Bubba needs someone to be careful around him. So Bubba is not used to complaining because he's puffing on behind, which tells me that he's probably used to Spike leaving him behind. He's also out of breath, which maybe tells me he's a little bit unfit. Bubba knows his mum doesn't love him or care for him like she should. Bubba's not got the nicest home life, because it says Bubba couldn't care less. Oh, sorry, Bubba's mother couldn't care less. So that's the evidence there. And then here, Bubba maybe is not as educated as Spike, because the way that he speaks isn't using standard English, because he says, "Do you reckon Vandals done that?" And obviously the tense is wrong. It should be, "Do you reckon that Vandals did that?" And really you wouldn't say reckon, it would be, "Do you think that Vandals did that?" He's quite a worrier, because maybe he's worrying that the Vandals are still there and he may get hurt. Maybe he's even worried that he might be blamed. Bubba is scared but doesn't want to admit it. Now, there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that, but the main bit is that he splashed for a bit, but only up to his knees. Really important, this, because he just doesn't want to share how he really feels. We know, sorry, there's a missing K there. I apologise. Typo alert. Well done to those of you that found that already. 5 house points to you. He feels like he needs to stay because maybe he's afraid of Spike, and that comes from the fact that he keeps glancing up towards his shaft of sunlight, but he doesn't actually do it at any point because Spike is still down there. Well done to those of you for having a really good go at that. That is the end of this lesson. So I will see you again tomorrow, and it will be Thursday's lesson. We're still looking at characterization and looking really at the comparison of the characters, but also how Bubba changes as the story progresses. Right, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you this afternoon for our Read for Pleasure. Bye guys!